Greetings, my name's Andrew Sumner. My grandfather, Pop Smythe, bought me my first comic book in Liverpool, England, when I was 3 years old, and I spent the next 50 years hurtling around the pop culture kaleidoscope, first as a fan, and then as a journalist, editor, publisher and presenter. Along the way, I met a bunch of interesting people who will be joining me here, creators, performers, professionals and public servants. We live in divisive, fractured times, but art and popular culture connect people from all viewpoints and from all walks of life. I'm often struck by the passions people enjoy, that they can set aside their differences for and agree on whatever those passions are, whether I share them or not. And that spark, that moment of instinctive, connective agreement, that's what I call a hard agree. So let's just ease in with some gentle conversation. How have you been, mate?
I've been okay. Yeah, now that things are getting back to normal quite a bit here, it's very strange getting back out into the world, but I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
no, me too, mate. Me too.
I'm in my 12th year at Rhino, and I love it. I it's not very many people can say they're doing what they dreamed of as a kid. I'm one of the lucky few, very lucky and fortunate.
And am I right in thinking that right at this moment in time, your job title is Senior Vice President of Fan Engagement and Insight? Is that correct?
Almost. Fan engagement and innovation.
Innovation, really, man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just a fancy way, fancy pants way of saying I try to find new ways to make people bump into our catalog, no matter where they live on the internet or other means.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know it's a brilliant title. It does really reflect a lot of the things that you have spearheaded in the last couple of years. So, welcome to Hard Agree. I'm Andrew Sumner. I'm here with my friend John Hughes from Rhino Entertainment, and John has had a fascinating career, and like myself, is a big comic book fan. In addition to being a mover and shaker in the record industry,
I'll take that.
Right on. And has been heavily involved with one of my all-time favourite bands over the last decade or so, the Monkees, which we'll talk about in a bit. Yeah, right. And if you were seeing the video of this, you would see an array of beautiful records sat behind John in his office, because John was one of the main people that made the Monkees' last two records happened, the award-winning and much loved Good Times, and then the Monkees' Christmas album also.
I love it. That's how it always is. The award-winning and highly lauded Good Times and Christmas party.
But before we talk about any of that good stuff, John, you've got a fascinating career history that kind of begins, because you're from Ohio originally, right, if I recall?
Yeah, a little town west of Cleveland, west of Cleveland called Elyria, Ohio.
Yeah, mm-hmm. But you started out in the military, right, mate?
Crazy. Elyria was a really great place to grow up as a kid. It was not a great place to stay as an adult. So I wanted to get out any way I could. And 3 friends of mine were joining the Army, the U.S. Army. And I kind of watched from a distance. And one day I said, you know what, I'm going to go with you guys to the recruiter and see what's up. And I'm going through they had a big book of jobs. It was almost like a catalog, flip through and pick your dream job. And I'm looking through, and one of them is broadcast journalist. And I said to the guy, is this like, the movie Good Morning Vietnam, like literally being a journalist? He says, oh, it's even more than that. You're in the field shooting stories. You're going back. You're learning how to edit. You're anchoring newscasts on TV and radio. You're also the DJ for a 4-hour shift at the radio station. I'm like, whoa, okay, I want to do this. And the guy's like, no. You should go into psychological operations. That's kind of the same. I was like, no, I really want to do this. And he said, well, it's really tough. You have to audition. We've never had anybody get accepted, but we'll give it a shot. So he had to order an audition script from the Defense Information School. It came, he called me. He had to sit in the room with me with a tape recorder and a microphone and watch me read the script. I couldn't take it with me. It was like a cold read. And they sent it off. And 3 weeks later, he called me. He said, I am shocked. You got in. I'm like, wow, okay, so now I guess I have to do this. So I joined the Army, and probably the best thing I ever did. Yeah, I look back now, I'm 53. I cannot believe I did it. What the hell was I thinking? But I did it, and I got to see the world. I spent most of my time in South Korea, and I was also at Fort Ord when it was open in Monterey, California. And I did everything that they said on the tin. I did TV, I did radio, I learned how to edit. I can direct a TV show. If you put me in front of a control room, I can do all that. Not so well now, probably. I forgot a lot, but that's a long-winded way of saying that's how it got me into media. Got out, got my communications degree, started working in radio, went into advertising and became a creative copywriter, and did that for a few years, moved out to California, got recruited by a company here. They moved me to California, which is probably the second best day of my life. Like, yeah, I'm here. And just weird set of fate that I just kept getting recruited by different companies until one day I was at Guess, the clothing manufacturer, doing their e-commerce. I like to joke I was Ugly Betty, if you are familiar with that show.
Indeed, yeah.
I was surrounded by beautiful people, and I was like the bald white guy, like, well, let's do this. And I saw a job opening on Yahoo Hot Jobs. If anybody remembers that, I'll take you back. And it was at Rhino, and I saw it, and I love telling this story. And cut me off if I'm going too long here.
I want to hear it, mate. I want to hear it.
This is the best story. I saw the job. I didn't apply. I picked up the phone, and I got the switchboard, and I said, I Googled who was running the department at that time. And I said, I'm calling for Joe Smith. And the receptionist said, well, who is this? And I said, this is John Hughes from Guess. And they put me right through. Didn't ask why, or they just heard Guess, and they were like, oh, crap. And I got the guy on the phone, and I gave him just the story I gave you, pretty much ran down my resume. And I said, give me 10 minutes with you, and you can stop your job search. I mean, I was cocky. Really cocky, because I kind of knew I had the technical stuff they were looking for in terms of e-commerce, and I had the music knowledge. And those two things don't necessarily go together a lot. And they brought me in for an hour interview that turned into 8 hours with no lunch, no bathroom break, no offer of water. I was like, is this a test? But I think what sealed the deal was during one of the, because they had me interviewing with several different departments. And during one of the departments, I was asked, who's your favorite Rhino artist under the Warner catalog? And I said, well, probably not my favorite, but one of the ones I really like that I don't think gets enough respect is Joe Bryeth. Yeah. I threw out Joe Bryeth, and that's when I think I got hired.
Brilliant, mate. That's fantastic. Now, just to roll back on something you touched upon there. In the middle of that anecdote, you referred to yourself as bald white guy, which of course is not doing you any justice, because if you know John Hughes, what you know about him is he's an extremely fit, muscular, very well-built human being. Now, my question is, did that come from your army days? Is that something that you got into?
That is the assumption, right? Yeah. I did not do crap in the Army. I was 19 years old, 125 pounds, soaking wet, 5'8". I got up in the morning and did the physical training, the bare minimum. I skated by for 4 years. I didn't do anything. I didn't really start working out until I was like 25, and I was out of the Army. And to be real frank, the reason why I started working out is because I was gay, and I wanted to attract what I liked.
Yes, so, makes complete sense. Makes complete
1,000% vanity. That's the only reason.
And you were 1,000% successful as well, right, mate?
Yeah, I got married.
Yeah. And your husband's an extremely handsome dude, So
Well, I like to think so. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, he is. So, mate. So, when was it? What year are we talking about when you came on board at Rhino?
2009, September 2009. September 29th, 2009. I just love that day because I'm so happy here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I want to talk very specifically about the Monkees in a sec. But outside of your relationship with the Monkees and all the things that you've done with them, who are the artists that you've enjoyed working with the most, that you feel proudest of your association with in the time you've been there?
Definitely Grateful Dead, just amazing. A band that I knew about, being a little punk rocker, new wave synth pop guy. I was like, oh, Grateful Dead, ooh, that's the enemy. Not at all. Things really changed for me when I went to that 50th anniversary July 4th show in Chicago with a bunch of people from work. And that's, when you see them live, that's when you get it. It's kind of sad that, the whole crew, Jerry and everybody are not with us anymore.
Yeah.
But something clicked. It was not chemically enhanced. It just clicked for me. And the Cars, of course, I had the real distinct pleasure of working very closely with Rick Ocasek on doing the reissues that we did. I like to think we helped get them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally, because that happened right after we did those reissues. I'm not taking credit for it, but I like to hope. That was amazing. Zeppelin, I haven't had a lot of face-to-face interaction with the band, being as mysterious as they are. I love that. I think they should always keep that mysteriousness about them. But, you get a chance to work with one of the biggest bands in rock history. Wow. I still wake up and pinch myself.
I mean, that it must be truly amazing, to be honest. I mean, to work with Zeppelin, I guess Zeppelin's like working with Sinatra, isn't it? It's when you get, there are icons and there are icons, and
another level.
Yeah, and that level of mystery that you've touched upon, I think that's an incredibly important part of their appeal. You don't want those guys to be accessible and just seeing them everywhere, chatting and whatnot.
I think there's levels of accessibility. I love Robert Plant's podcast. I think that's great. Jimmy has come out and done other things and done Q&As. That's fine. I like the fact that they keep us, the label, honest. It's like, no, you're not going to flog this and do 5,000 greatest hits compilations, and it keeps that band's mystique alive, and it's excellent. I wish I worked with them more. I don't work with them that much like I used to because of my new position, but it's just I love having any association with them whatsoever.
I can totally understand that. And how did your long and close and fruitful association with the Monkees come up?
I was a fan before I started Rhino. I call myself a Monkees 1.5 generation fan. You have the 1.0s, which saw it when it was aired in the 60s. Then you have the 1.5.
That's like myself, I have to say. I'm old enough to be on an original 60s viewer.
Wow. Then I was a 1.5, it was in syndication here in the 70s, early mid 70s. And that's when I became a fan. The first record I was given by my Aunt Judy, shout out to Aunt Judy, was the Monkees' first album. She gave me her well-worn copy from the 60s, and I loved it. I always skipped "I'm Gonna Buy Me a Dog." I'll admit. Even as a kid, I couldn't get through that song.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, but the rest of it's great. And so when I got to Rhino, Andrew Sandoval was at Rhino still when I first started. And, I made a beeline for his office and just kind of told him how much I loved what he did for the band and how great it was. And then when Andrew left, no one was kind of there to pick it up. And so I just started beating the drum and doing things. And it was a long road to get everybody back in the fold because, Davey was Davey. Nez had really kind of disassociated himself at that point. Yeah. I think the turning point for me and the Monkees was when we did the Head Super Deluxe Edition.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Google Plus, G Plus.
Right on. Yeah.
Nez had an account on G Plus, so I just sent him a random DM one day and I said, I have this, we did this, I'd love to send you a copy. And he replied. It was like this long letter, like, no one talks to me. I'm so glad you reached out. I'd love a copy. And I got him on the phone and did an interview with him for, an early version of the Rhino podcast back then. And, that door opened and then just started some communication with Peter. And then Mickey, who is the best guy. I love that man. And I'm, not to be show busy, but we're friends now. It's not even work. We're actually friends and like dinner and drinks and stuff. And I'm pinching the 5-year-old John constantly, like, stop being a fanboy, just treat him like a human, do it. So, and then the 50th anniversary came up and I walked into our president, Mark Pincus's office. And I said, Mark, it's the Monkees 50th anniversary. We need to do a new Monkees record. And he said, okay, when are we starting? I'm like, whoa, okay. I didn't expect that reaction. And then I had this wild idea. I love Fountains of Wayne, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Quite rightly so.
Yeah. And I heard this song, that they did called It Must Be Summer. And I always thought that's a Monkees song. It's a Monkees song. I should have Adam Schlesinger produce a record for the Monkees. And so I just got a contact with him from one of my great coworkers, Suzanne, who knew him from their days at Atlantic. And I called him and had him in for a meeting. He's like, I'm in. When do we meet the band? And it was amazing. And I just want to take a second to remember Adam, because we actually became best friends after that. And he passed away last April 1st, really early.
Tragically passed away due to COVID, right, John?
It was really, we didn't know what was going on. This is when he got sick in March, at the end of February even. He was texting me saying, hey, I have this cough that won't go away. I might have to go see someone. And then it went downhill so fast and nobody knew what was happening. And I kind of wish he was here today. If he had just held out another month, he may have gotten one of those experimental treatments, but it was just really.
It's a heartbreaking tragedy. And such a talented guy. I mean, he was a very close friend of yours. I'm a huge admirer of his for everything that he did. Fantasy of Wayne, for the work you guys did together, for that thing you do, of course, which is just an amazingly indelible piece of music, and it's just to have him taken away like that is must have been very tough for all of you.
He would have been blown away by the reaction. He never doubted himself. He never doubted his talent. He was very firm about his value, which was awesome. And I learned from him about that. But he also was kind of self-deprecating, like, hey, I'm a 2000s one-hit wonder, but he wasn't. He just was so talented. And if anything made that horrible experience better, it was seeing the flood of reactions to his passing. It was really gratifying.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I guess that's the upside if there is one. So many wonderful people go through the world, and the passing is relatively unmarked, other than by their close friends. But I mean, he genuinely left a legacy in a way that it must be a great blessing to one's family and one's friends to be around that when it happens. And his life definitely had purpose and meaning, right?
He changed my life entirely. And the great thing about that is I am one of maybe 100 people that can say that. It's not just me. He touched so many people and changed so many people, and we miss him.
Yeah. Well said, brother. Well said indeed. When it comes to the album that you guys worked together on, could you talk a bit about, you just recruited an amazing lineup of writing talent on this album, and I think one of the reasons that I'm a big Monkees fan, as you know, but I would say that both within fandom and outside of it, it's kind of widely considered to be one of the Monkees' best albums. Which is quite an amazing achievement, really. Given the fact that you put it together so long after the heyday, and so long after, because what always surprises me about people who are only casual Monkees fans is how unaware many people are of how big the wealth of recorded material actually is, and what's actually out there, and how much value there is to the Monkees albums. I mean the stuff I'm interested in really is stuff from Headquarters onwards, and like a lot of fans. But
you're hardcore. You're a hardcore.
Yeah, I am hardcore. But I also get a lot of pleasure out of playing, say, all the Nez country tracks for my friends who are musos who don't even know that stuff exists. And they're like, wow, what is this? This is amazing. So it's the Monkees, mate. It's you know, and it might be Mike Nesmith in a recording studio waiting out his contract, but it's the Monkees nonetheless, right? But to flip to what I wanted to ask you about, which is how you put it all together with those incredible songwriters. What was the process there, John?
I wish I could say there was a big master plan, and I sat back and I was, Machiavellian, and I was very specific about who I reached out to. Not at all. The sad truth is I had a few people in mind. Adam had a few people in mind, and we just we started. I think we underestimated ourselves at the beginning. We started small. We were asking really well-loved, but still indie bands like Rogue Wave, for example, to contribute songs. And they did, and they were great. Zach from Rogue Wave contributed Terrifying, which is a brilliant song, which should have been on the record. I got overruled on that one, but it ended up as a B-side. At least it's out there in the world. But that song should have been on the record. But we went.
I love that tune too.
It's so good. And then we went from there to, a wider net, and we just kind of tested it. And Adam knew Weezer's manager and Rivers, and asked Rivers Cuomo, and he's like, sure, send us 7 songs. The guy is just a writing machine.
Yeah.
And that really kind of emboldened us. Okay, we're gonna start aiming higher. And I was like, I know, Andy Partridge through my friend Jason Day here at Rhino. Let's ask Andy Partridge. And I believe Andrew Sandoval knew him as well, and made the ask. Andy Partridge lost his mind. He's such a huge Monkees fan. He drew a picture of Mickey for a Monkees fanzine when he was a kid, and he sent me the scan of it. He contributed at least 8 songs, I think, at one count. We had to narrow it down to 1. And then again, now we've got a bunch of names behind us. We can start dropping them to other people. So Adam knew Noel Gallagher for some random reason, shot him a note saying, hey, these guys have contributed. Do you have anything? And Noel, I think I saw the email. He was super tickled by the aspect of the Monkees asking him for a song. It was almost like a joke, but he loved it. And he's like, well, I happen to have this sort of 3/4 finished tune I was working on with my friend Paul Weller. Yes, please. And he sent that, and that was Birth of an Accidental Hipster, which is our big psychedelic head moment on the record. It was perfect. And we just kept going. Nez had a great song called I Know What I Know that was very different in demo form. Adam really stripped it down and did this arrangement that was very striking. Peter had a bunch of stuff, but the one that we gravitated to was Little Girl, which he actually wrote for Davy Jones.
That's so lovely. When did he write that? When did he write that?
66.
Amazing.
And it was written for, he thought, I want to be free. He's kind of a Davy. I'm going to write a Davy song. And that was that. My big regret is I wish Mickey wrote more. Yeah. He doesn't fancy himself as a writer, which I find a shame because he writes stuff that I think the fact that he doesn't think he's a writer emboldens him to be so different. Yeah. No one else is going to write a song like Shorty Blackwell.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No, I agree. And I remember reading Peter talk a couple of times talking about, his kind of dismay, for want of a better word, that Mickey didn't write more. And, Dolen's songs are so unusual. And they've got, as you say, Shorty Black was a great example. But Mommy and Daddy, for example, who's going
to write that? Who's going to write a boo wow chicka chicka wow wow? Who's going to do that? Mickey. Randy Scouse Git.
Oh man, I mean, I'm from Merseyside and I love that song. To me, and I don't know anybody who doesn't love that song. It's an amazing piece of work.
It's dance hall. He's scatting. Yeah. I mean, what is happening here? Yeah. And so I kind of locked him in a room with Adam at one point. Actually, they went up to Mulholland and just kind of sat together and tried to write a song looking over the Hollywood Hills. And that's where I was there, and I'm told I had a good time came from. So, which was, Mickey's catchphrase that he uses in every interview, and he knows that. And so we wanted to have fun with that, and
Yeah.
that was the result.
I think as a listener, I think what you guys got exactly right with that album is that I think it's an hour-long sort of exercise in joy. That's the way I would describe it. But it doesn't feel like say Pull It or like Just Us, which feels essentially like a very pale echo of the Monkees. You've got right to the heart of what the band is, and I think you all truly understand it.
It's in the title. Good time. That was the mission statement. And it was, we don't want it to sound like the 60s. We don't want it to sound like the 80s. We don't want it to sound like 2016. We want it to be timeless. So timeless was the key word, and good times was the mission statement. And, people are like, I wish there were more ballads, and that was not the goal. Sorry. And Andrew, we stumbled into it. I mean, we had 4 weeks to do the album. We had committed ourselves. I don't know if you remember the timeline. The album was on Amazon and was the #1 album on Amazon before we had recorded a single note. We did this so ass backwards. We announced it. We were too excited. We got pre-orders in, and then we got this big, in the US, it's a big deal, the CBS Sunday Morning piece. And the piece was Memorial Day weekend. So we had to have the album out May 27th, come hell or high water, to make that interview. And I think there were mostly good things about that deadline pressure, and a couple of bad things. A couple of bad things is you've got someone like Michael Nesmith, who is a caring perfectionist and wants things done. The famous quote from him that I'll never forget is, "John, deadlines aren't physics." I'm like, oh, okay. At first I was like, what? Huh? And now I get what he's saying. It was like, why are we rushing when this is art? And he was right, but commerce sometimes overtakes us.
Of course.
That kind of made me Johnny Kirshner at one point. And I don't relish that, but I like my job. So,
did you get a fist through the wall moment? That's the thing.
No, not at all. Nothing like that. And I don't think he would ever do that. I care a lot for him, and I like to think we're friends too. And I get what he was saying. I understand my name's got on it, but it's not in bold type with my picture on the cover. His name's on it, and it's going to live with him forever. So if he's not happy with something, he's not going to be happy with it, period.
Yeah.
The good part of that deadline pressure is it forced us to move. We couldn't dilly-dally. We couldn't navel gaze. It had to be done. Are there mixes I think could be better? Sure. But I will tell you, as the guy who was literally sitting in an office chair like this over Adam Schlesinger's shoulder in his New York City loft, watching him mix it into the night at 2:30 in the morning, because we had to make a mastering deadline in 3 days. It had to be done.
Yeah, no, and it fascinates me that so often great art comes out of these deadline pressured moments, whether that's movies, whether it's records. I mean, sometimes the exact opposite is true, of course, but you definitely collectively, you and Adam and the band had this lightning in a bottle moment where you just put something extraordinary together. And to see the reviews you got, not just from lifelong fans like myself, because sure, we're an important audience, but, to see, I used to be a music journalist, to see professional, often Monkees resistant music journalists really embracing the album, that must have felt amazing.
We got a feature review in Rolling Stone,
right?
Famously just completely trashed the whole concept for decades. We got Mojo, we got Uncut, we got all these really stellar reviews, and it was a shock. It was a shock, almost as shocking as debuting at number 14 on the Billboard Top 200. I was praying for top 50. I'm like, top 50. They'll have their first top 50 album in whatever it was, 30 years or whatever. No, top 20. It's so close to top 10. If they had not recently changed the charts to reflect streaming, we would have been probably number 5 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah, right on. Such a beautifully justified result. And as you might recall, John, I used to be the publisher of Uncut magazine, and
Yes.
the thing about Uncut is not necessarily one of the great secrets, but something people might not know unless they were talking to somebody who'd worked on the magazine for a long time, like myself. Is Uncut is full of Monkees fans. Everyone's a Monkees fan on Uncut. So I can imagine. I was no longer on the magazine when they out, and I was working with you on some other things, in fact. But when they must have, I can just imagine how that went down in the offices, because I can imagine when it went down when you started. I think I heard the first tracks from it, to be honest, mate, in your office, and that kind of arcs into what I think is. I think the album's triumphant on many levels, and I think you and Adam and the guys, quite rightly, have received all the plaudits for that, and it's just such an amazing achievement. But I think, as great as the album is, and as great a moment in time as the album was, I think the other thing that you guys really achieved is producing one of the top 5 Monkees songs of all time in 2016, which is Me and Magdalena, which I just think was an incredibly spectral moment of oral beauty. And I first heard it in your office, and I was just blown away, and I'm still blown away by it now.
That was interesting. A friend of mine at work, Brian Hay, knew Ben Gibbard's manager. And I thought, ooh, that could be interesting. So we shot him an email, and Ben Gibbard, again, the Monkees fans, it was like lifting up a rock and watching them all come out, scurry out. He was a huge Monkees fan, and he sent us the demo. And I don't know if you've ever heard the demo. He released it himself a couple of years ago, but it's very synthesizer-y. Yeah. It's got a beat. It's mid-tempo. It's great. And I heard this, and I was like, this could be interesting. And I sat with Adam, and I played it for him, and Adam's like, I don't get it. And I said, make it a country western song for Nez. And he's like, oh. And so I was like, Nez needs a country showcase. And the funny thing is, Nez's musical taste now, I don't want to assume, but I'm going to anyway. He probably would have preferred the synthesized approach. And that's what I want to do, John. Yeah. I want to do stuff like that. I know my Nez is really bad. But we did this countrified thing, and they've mentioned it in interviews. There was a battle between Mickey and Nez for that song. Like, I want to sing it. I want to sing, it was to me, it wasn't to each other. So I thought, why don't you both sing it? Yeah. And so we made it a duet with more of a Mike showcase. He has a solo part. But then Adam said, I don't know, this country version, I see it as a Byrds song. So there's Me and Magdalena version 2. We went ahead and cut that. And then Adam and I went into the ring, had 10 rounds. One of us stood victorious. I will let you decide who that was based on which version ended up on the album. Well,
which I think, honestly, was the only choice. I like the version 2. And I like the demo as well, which I've also heard. But I think the version on the album is head and shoulders the version that should be out there. And it gives such a great account of that song.
If we had put the Byrds version on the album, it would have just blended in, because there are a lot of mid-tempo songs on that record, a lot of guitar jingly songs on that record. We needed some texture. We needed to slow things down a bit. We needed to pause right before we went into that psychobilly freakout that is Birth of Accidental Hipster. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I agree with my choice.
I also agree with your choice, John Hughes, and your choice, of course, has travelled the world because that song went on a great journey that outdistanced the original album. It seems to me, from my point of view, many people. I
told you it was now the 3rd most streamed Monkees song, right behind I'm a Believer and Daydream Believer.
Mate, do you know what? I'm very gratified to hear that, and I totally believe it. Without knowing that, I like it because it's serving to underline my point, and B, that doesn't surprise me at all, John. I mean, I think it's truly a special piece of music, which is how you have to feel as well. And that alone, it seems to me that one of the beauty of talking about your career at Rhino is it's made up of these moments. If you took them one by one, you'd be like, wow, man, even if I just had that would be great. But your kind of Monkees arc is like an embarrassment of wonderful riches, isn't it? You have the fact that we're having this conversation about good times, but we're also having this conversation about me and Magdalena. That's got to feel pretty special, mate.
It's 5 years old at this point. Can you believe that?
That's incredible. I find that amazing.
And it still sells. I mean, because I got an ego. I'll claim it. I look at the sales figures every few weeks. I'm like, it's still moving. Okay. And, I kind of in some ways feel like the high school football quarterback, 10 years at the reunion, wistfully looking back saying, that was the high point of my life. Now it's all over. But no, you said lightning in a bottle, which is how Mickey always describes the Monkees casting.
Yeah.
That album was the same thing, and it's never going to be replicated. I mean, we've lost Peter, we've lost Adam. It's just, trying to replicate it in some aspect with Christmas Party was an attempt. I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm not as proud of it as I am Good Times. The difference, and I'll be real honest with you and your listeners, the difference between Good Times and Christmas Party was a lot of meddling. Good Times, we were left alone. And it was like, we trust you, go do this, make it happen. Christmas Party, it was, okay, you did this last time. What are we going to do this time? And how are we going to do it? All right, I need to hear this. No, we have to have a song that's relevant for the UK, which is how Wizard, I Wish It Was Christmas Every Day, ended up on the record. And I get it. It's a commercial enterprise and we've got things to do, but boy, the difference between the two is somewhat striking. But I'm going to defend Christmas Party a little bit, thanks to the aforementioned Michael Nesmith, who was given the freedom, which is the key word again here, to go off and do 2 tracks completely on his own with his sons. And Snowfall is one of the best tracks on that record. And he's like, I want to cover Snowfall. And I'm like, and I made him laugh because I said, the Manhattan Transfer song? He's like, John, this song's a little older than that. Oh, okay. That was my only point of reference, was the Manhattan Transfer version. But, again, because he had the freedom to go do what he wanted, it came out better.
Yeah. And it's a very, very beautiful rendition. And so for me personally, I think I actually really love House of Broken Gingerbread. I love that song.
Again, Adam wrote it. That was the first track we worked on with Mickey, and we were left alone. There were people who hated that song. Why? Well, I don't get it. Why is it's not a Christmas song? Where are the sleigh bells? And I was at that point able to fend them off a bit, and we got that as a result. I'm not saying I have all the answers and no one else can give good input. It was just like, I'm going to be honest, it was overwhelming at points where it was like I was getting hit by all sides.
And well played to you for getting through it and getting to the other side of it. And at least, from a kind of marketing releasing perspective, the beauty of a Christmas album, right, is that it can be a hardy perennial. So, it's not all just tied into one season. Yeah,
it's done well. And, like you said, House of Broken Gingerbread, I listened to that song in August. It's just a great song, and again, it's bittersweet because you think, wow, Adam just had these things in him. And again, another great Adam story, just how he knows everyone in the universe. He's like, John, Michael Chabon, the guy who wrote, what's that comic book related?
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Yeah.
Yeah. And
The Escapist.
Yes. And he's like, he's a Monkees fan. He's also about Fountains of Wayne fan. I'm going to just see if he wants to write lyrics to the song. So Adam shoots off a random email to Chabon, and we end up with lyrics from Michael Chabon, this award-winning writer, on our little Christmas flight of fancy. So it was really cool.
I guess my 2 sort of closing questions slash topics for discussion really are that one's comic related and one's Fabric of the Monkees related. So I'll ask that one first. It would, again, as a fan, my feeling is that you do have kind of a beautiful epitaph of Peter on this album as well, which took on some kind of special resonance, I think, once Peter passed. Listening to that version of Angels We Have Heard on High, it's actually quite beautiful. which didn't strike me that way when I first heard it. But, once events took the shape they did, that's how I feel about it now.
That is the reaction arc of everyone when they hear it. They're like, what is this? What? I don't understand this Cher vocal. Yeah. And when they find out how it was recorded and under the circumstances, they're like, whoa, it's actually kind of ethereal. And that's what we were going for. Peter was very, very ill at the time, to the point where we were like, we might have to do this without him. And we did not want to. We left it up to him. Here's some stuff. If you feel it, great. If you're not up for it, we understand. He dragged himself to the recording studio one day between, treatments and did that vocal, and he was exhausted. It just took a lot out of him. And, it wasn't soon after that when the album came out, I think it was 2 months after that, we lost him. So I'm so glad he had the intestinal fortitude to do that. And it's something that, at the time people were confused by it. It was a very, very well kept secret about his illness and how serious it was. But then I think afterwards you listen to it and you're like, wow, it's really magic.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And then the other thing that you touched upon with Michael Chabon's involvement is the comic book connections that Christmas Party has, because it's not just Chabon, it's the cover, right?
It started with Good Times. Remember the video for She Makes Me Laugh?
Yeah.
I took the Dell, my personal Dell comic book collection of Monkees comics, and they're rags. I didn't take my mint copies, please. Those are slabbed. And I took them to our scanner, and I scanned a bunch of them in with a really talented creative director we have here named Jocelyn Lane, and we made this lyric video for, I think it was $500, and now it's got over 1 million views. And so I've always had that comic book connection in what I do. I talent borrows, genius steals. So I'm constantly stealing ideas from my collecting world to bring into the music job. Right now I'm working on NFTs. The NFTs, I'm using my knowledge of collecting and comics and variants. And okay, you got to have this different cover. I do variant covers on all my releases. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I do.
So the Christmas Party comes around, and I just keep seeing his art with Monkees references. I'm like, I got to get 2 people to do this album cover, either Alex Ross or Michael Allred. And Alex Ross, he did some lithographs and stuff, which were beautiful. Didn't quite get the excitement from him. Michael Allred just lost his friggin' mind and sent me, I hadn't even worked out a contract with or payment or anything with him. And he sent me a fully rendered pencil drawing. I would say it's a rough. It was nowhere near rough of the album concept. And I was like, this, don't change a thing. I mean, all the Easter eggs were in there already. His Monkees knowledge is unsurpassed, except maybe Andrew Sandoval. And I was like, wow, Mike, good job. So we used that art also for the lyric video. I cannot remember the name of the song, but it's the Santa song, the Rivers Cuomo song about Santa. What would Santa do? That's it.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool. And the comic book thing is really important to me because I always took inspiration from my favorite superheroes, Captain America, my all-time favorite. When I joined the Army, this is going to sound so maudlin and dumb. I thought I was doing what Steve Rogers would do. I literally thought about Captain America when I was raising my hand, taking the oath, enlisting. I felt like it was 1941 and I was the scrawny kid volunteering because of Pearl Harbor. It was a peace sign, but still the thought was there. So it's really influenced pretty much a lot of my life.
Yeah, I mean, that is a connection that you and I have that we've touched upon before. Given the fact that I'm probably about 10 years older than you, and I'm an Englishman from Merseyside, my favourite comic book character, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is also Captain America.
Really?
Oh yeah, but and it's got a lot to do with the fact that this is a story I've told a lot, so I'll do the super brief version. But my grandfather, Pop Smythe, fought with an American unit in World War II. And he came back from World War II with a massive love of Americans and American popular culture. And it's mainly because he was with an American regiment and he was living off American rations, which were much better than the British rations. He would, with his rations, which would be like chuck steak and all that kind of stuff, whereas essentially the British rations at that point, having had the supply lines cut by the Nazis for so long, were essentially cardboard. Yeah. He was eating really nice food, but he's also getting 2 cigarettes a day, a Hershey bar, and a comic book. So he came back from World War II with a bunch of Captain American comics, with a bunch of Human Torch comics. So when I was a kid in the 60s, I had chronic asthma for a few years and I was in hospital. This is a classic comic book fan story, right? Pops brought his comics into a hospital, and the first comic book he ever bought me was Batman 184. And that's when I was 3 years old. Such is born the obsession of a lifetime, mate. But because of the transformation, the particularly acute transformation of Scrawny to Captain America. And when I first really got into reading Captain America, it was in the first Tales to Astonish full bloom era of the Lee and Kirby, readings of that character.
Good place to come in.
Yeah, right on. And those very early World War II exploits now, where after reintroducing, they went back in time and had a bunch of Bucky tales and whatnot. Yeah, that really set a massive. I've loved Captain America ever since, and I love the whole World War II connection because it's a through line with my grandfather. But
it's funny you say that. The Kirby brought you in because Kirby brought me in. I started the first comic I ever found was a tattered copy of Captain America 154 on the playground, and he's fighting himself. And why are there 2 of them? And I don't get it. It's like the conclusion of this long Steve Englehart story. Yeah. But a 5-year-old me is like, I can follow along. Yeah. But I really got into it when Kirby came back in
during the Mad Bomb era. Yeah.
I'm not wearing it today. I thought I was wearing my Mad Bomb shirt. My favorite cover of all time. Yeah, I was actually reading before that. I remember 192 was like a fill-in issue by Frank Robbins. And at the end, I don't know if you know the end of that issue, there's a big third panel at the bottom saying, next issue, King Kirby is back. And I'm like, what's a King Kirby? And why am I supposed to be excited? And boy, did I find out.
Yeah. No, I really love that run, and it was at the time. I mean, I read that, I bought those issues in real time, and because I'd really picked up my. It's funny, my Captain America buying habits kind of went in waves, and obviously I was a fan of the stuff where I really built up my month-to-month reading habits was with the Englehart Sal Buscema stuff, right?
Yeah,
but I absolutely loved the balls out craziness of that Kirby arc, like so much of what he was doing around that time.
You were the minority.
Yeah, I know, and I was, because in the letter columns, which you could tell, and you now look at them, are partially set up by the bullpen and Stan, whoever. It's all design. It's all full of fucking complaints, right? Do you know what I mean? But I thought it was glorious in its insanity. That's what I loved about it.
As a kid, I think I was probably 7 or 8 at that point. The consensus on the playground was, along with the letter column people,
of course.
He's drawing. We call him Square Boy because he draws square fingertips, and what are the squiggly lines on his knees? People didn't get it. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. But something drew me to it. It was like almost primal, And then as much as I complained about his art, I bought Eternals. I bought Black Panther. I bought everything he did at Marvel. That Marvel 70s era, that Marvel Kirby 70s era that's so looked down upon sometimes. Yeah. That is my primo stuff, man. Machine Man, give me Dinosaur, I'm in.
Yeah, man, it is a great era. And talking about Kirby and talking about that era, it makes me wonder if, given your military background, did you ever? So, were you into the immediate era prior to that, the end of Kirby's DC era? Were you a fan of that stuff?
No, I didn't get New Gods. I tried to read it over and over and over, and I don't understand the dialogue. And it's the typical Kirby criticism is stilted. I wouldn't say it's stilted. I would say they talk like gods.
Yeah.
And we are not used to hearing gods speak. That's the adult me.
Yeah.
The kid me is like, I don't know. What's a Steppenwolf?
Yeah.
And Commandy was a kid's book, and I'm using air quotes here. And I may be a kid, but I'm not a kid. I'm not reading that. Demon was scary. I don't get this at all. So the only DC book that Kirby did that for some strange reason I was drawn to as a kid was the Justice Inc., the Avenger.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Actually, mate, that is such a great book. That is such a great book, and of course, most of the issues, Kirby's not even on the covers; it's Joe Kubert covers, right? But
and he's not writing it.
Yeah, I love that too. In fact, it's a very able adaptation of the Avenger series. It's really well done. It's really telescoped down and done well.
You look back at that late era where he was just marking time at DC, where, he just kind of gave up on doing his own stuff. And he's doing stuff like Justice Inc. He did an issue of Richard Dragon Kung Fu. And you're like, wow, he's gotta be miserable just being a robot, a pencil robot.
A gun for hire, yeah.
But it's so good.
But do you know what? I couldn't agree more. And the reason I was asking, I was just touching upon your military background, is a series that I love is his 12 issues on our fighting forces when he takes over the Losers. That's one of the greatest Kirby books of all time.
I didn't know about it when I was a kid. No clue. I don't read war books, whatever. Just pass them on the rack. As an adult, young adult, in my 20s, I discovered he did Our Fighting Forces. And I'm like, I got to get my favorite artist of all time, and I don't have this. I got to get a run of Our Fighting Forces. And it's a tough run to get in grade.
It's very, very difficult to get, yeah.
Yeah, but I got it. And you've got just these personal stories that obviously some stuff is drawn by experience from his experience, and some stuff is just Kirby wackiness, like the comic book Rocket story, Panama Fatty. I love it. I just wish it would have been more Mike Royer, less D. Bruce Berry.
Yeah, mate, I'm so with you. I think D. Bruce Berry is an okay Kirby, certainly not the worst Kirby inker. But I mean, Mike Royer's the man in terms of just bringing that propulsive beauty of Kirby to the page. You just feel like you're getting at source Kirby. But
he wasn't afraid of a brush. He wasn't afraid of a heavy line.
Oh, he loved a heavy line. Yeah.
Bruce Berry is more like, I'm going to trace this the way Jack did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I think you've really touched upon what works about the Losers, because while it is madcap extreme Kirby, it is also very much Jack's experience of being in the army, and the thing is, I read a lot of the war books primarily because because Pop's an ex-serviceman who bought me a lot of my comics. He would buy every single war book that is out there. So I've got very long runs of Sergeant Rock and Our Fighting Forces and GI Combat with the Haunted Tank, all those books. And at the time, I remember it's the same thing happened with the Losers. The standard Losers fans who are used to script by Kanigher and beautiful artwork by John Severin, which was amazing, by the way.
Who's going to replace John Severin?
Yeah. I mean, that's it. So to go from, Severin to boom, without any warning, suddenly Kirby's writing and drawing the whole thing. All the classic war fans. Yeah, they're all up in arms. It's terrible, right? But
there was a subplot about, I think, Captain Storm's missing girlfriend.
Yes.
And that's all anybody seemed to focus on.
No, that's right. Because Kirby just ignored all the continuity, and it was essentially on pause until those guys came back. But the interesting thing about Kanigher that for years I didn't realize is, for a long time I assumed, this guy was like in the army. In fact, he's the only guy on the war books who never served, and he just came up with this funny kind of formula for creating the books. Kubert was a soldier, all the other guys were, he wasn't. But so therefore, even though it's Kirby and it's very extreme, there's an absolute level of emotional reality in it, I find.
And just practical reality. He used to do those little 1 or 2 page equipment reviews in the back that were so historically accurate. I mean, you don't put historically accurate and Jack Kirby in the same sentence very often, but this was one of them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, mate. And let's flip back to Captain America for a second. Yeah. What were your other favorite creative runs on Captain America?
No one will stand above Mark Gruenwald. People give him a lot of crap, but he took over that book, I think, with issue 308 and wrote it to almost the bitter end before Mark Waid came on. And ignore Capwolf, okay? Ignore the superior stratagem where he gets changed into a woman. Take the goofiness out of it, yeah. Or keep it in. What was Kirby? Goofy. This was goofy stuff. This is the guy who gave us U.S. Agent, John Walker, Flag Smasher, Crossbones, Diamondback. As a Captain America fan, which was Kirby, action, intrigue, Indiana Jones type cliffhangers and adventures, Mark Gruenwald delivered that month after month after month after month, and he does not get enough respect as probably the preeminent Captain America author. Behind him, Englehart. That Englehart run is classic. It's with the exception of Gruenwald, you can't touch it. It's not a mistake that the two greatest stories are Cap being replaced by Gruenwald and Cap quitting by Englehart, because you got a look into why Steve Rogers is Captain America. No matter what they do, I love Sam Wilson as Cap. I love, all the different changes. Steve Rogers is Captain America. You can't separate the two. I can give you the low points.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this subject, and it's what you're already saying is fascinating me for a bunch of reasons. So please continue. I'm dying to hear it.
Post Kirby, Stan Lee and Gene Colan's run, yawner, man brute. All right, name one memorable story from that run. I challenge you.
Maybe the only interesting thing about that run is the creation of the Falcon. That's maybe I can't remember. Was Lee off it by then? Was it Roy Thomas?
No, it was Lee and Colan.
It was. Yep,
I'll give him the Falcon. And that is interesting that you bring that up, because people always the argument about Lee is name one lasting character he created without Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko. You just named one.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was Gene Colan. Who knows?
Yeah, it was almost certainly Gene Colan. I'm
trying to give Stan some props after trashing him.
Yeah,
there is a point, and this is you've got nerds listening to this podcast, right?
Right on. Yeah.
Okay. There was a point in Captain America from like issue 232 or whenever, right before Byrne came on with Roger Stern, 247. Those 240s, the 238 to 246, it was fill-in after fill-in after fill-in. And I was a kid, and it was my favorite book. And even I was like, what is happening to this book? It was a low point for sure. You had that classic Punisher cover on 241, but the story inside, you open it up and it's Frank Springer. Boo! Bait and switch. It's just awful, awful stories with one little gem in there. And if you guys don't have this story, you should probably seek it out and find it. It's cheap. Two-parter. I want to say it was David Anthony Kraft, who just left us this week, unfortunately.
Sadly.
A character called Adonis. Yeah. Very cool story. Check that out if you haven't.
Mate, you've done what for me is the almost unthinkable. You've mentioned a story that I haven't actually read, so I'm definitely going to seek that out. That's a brilliant.
If I tell you the cover, you might remember the cover. It's got Captain America fighting a guy who's got a big piece of machinery lifted up, and he's melting. The guy's like melting.
Okay, the cover I do know. I've definitely never read that book. Yeah,
really cool Frank Miller cover. But there was a lot of lost opportunities on Captain America. Steve Gerber, who was probably one of my favorite writers, came on and then almost immediately left after screwing up his origin.
That was awful. No, that was terrible. I couldn't. I
had an older brother that died in
nonsense.
Pearl Harbor.
Fucking nonsense. Yeah, I agree.
What, Steve? I love you, but you need help. Yeah, so I can go on and on about Captain America creative.
John, I tell you what. So what I love about everything you've just said is that you happen to have named the one run on Captain America as your absolute favourite that I have always placed in the category of that's my least favourite iteration of Captain America, Mark Grunwald. And you've made me, I mean, I know how much of the DNA that was used in Falcon Winter Soldier comes from Grunwald, but you've made me want to go back and read it now, which is something nobody's ever achieved before.
Just do 332 through 350.
330, okay, I'll do it.
That's the Captain America U.S. Agent arc, and after that, there's good stuff. There's hidden gems in there. Streets of Poison is a good story. There's a lot of one-offs. It makes me miss Diamondback.
Yeah,
I don't know. You're familiar with her?
Yeah.
She was Cap's girlfriend for almost a decade, and now she's like, gone pretty much.
Yeah, basically inhabiting oblivion. I honestly, to hear your enthusiasm for this is kind of infectious. So, because for me, you don't get a bigger fan of Captain America than me. You'll get as big a fan yourself, but certainly you'll not find anybody who's English who loves Captain America as much as I do. I have discovered over the years. But for me, in addition to kind of Simon and Kirby, Link, the things that the runs that I really love, one of which you've named previously, I love that short 7 or 8 issue run with Stern and Byrne. I love that.
God, who's going to let them leave the book?
It's just insane that they
over a fill-in.
Just ridiculous. It's so needless. I remember being absolutely gutted when the news came out that they were leaving. It's like, what the hell's gone on? I thought we were
4-year run.
I thought we were going to get Fantastic Four, but on Captain America.
Yep.
And actually, I did enjoy the Stern and Zek books. I thought Zek was great. I liked those. And then I was a big fan of Wade and Garney, the first incarnation.
Okay, as much as I love Grunwald and I praise Grunwald, Wade and Garney was a breath of fresh air.
So it was unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, we were coming from that. Mark went out so badly with that Cap Armor storyline, Fighting Chance.
Yeah. Mark. Well, I think basically for me, what happened is I think there's 2 iterations of Wade Garney. There's Wade Garney before that dreadful, ridiculous interlude, the Heroes Reborn in interlude or whatever.
Only comic book I've ever ripped up.
And that comic book sucks. And you read that thinking, hang on, we've just gone from one of the all-time great Captain America runs, unexpected, and now we've got this, what, for a year? And then when they brought Wade and Garney back, I was like, yeah, okay, this is alas an act of great sense. But I think their mojo was gone when they came back the second time. It just was never in the same league as their original stories.
They were sprinting. They were ahead of everyone. They were going to go through that winner's tape, and someone tripped them, and they had to recover, and it was a shame. I think that second run that you're mentioning,
I always forget about this guy, and it's not fair to him. Dan Jurgens did a really cool run on volume 2 where he wrote and drew it, and it was. I think he brought back Donna Maria from the Kirby time. It was modernized, but still slam bam action.
Yeah, I think Jurgens is one of those guys who doesn't really get his due because he's an amazing journeyman. Sounds like it. He's being fobbed off with fake praise, but he's supremely reliable. I don't think he's ever anything other than nuts and bolts entertaining. And if you go back and you read something like Booster Gold, that's a book that shouldn't work, right? I don't think. But actually, it's tremendously entertaining. It's just good comics month after month, very proficient. And the other thing I absolutely love, and the thing that really pulled me back to Captain America, pretty much after Wade and Garney returned for volume 2 of their time on the book, I was then, despite my love for the character, Cap for me had fallen into the ranks of, okay, Cap's my favourite character, but they just can't get him right. And these books are so weak, I don't want to read them. And I've had that experience with many other superheroes. I'm sure that you have also. But what pulled me back in, and what pulled me back into Marvel actually, was the Brubaker-Epting run, which the guys at Gosh Comics, this is years before I ever worked with Forbidden Planet, and whatnot. The guys at Gosh Comics, actually, Nate at Gosh, I walked in one day and go, look, I'm looking for a new mainstream book to read. I've just finished X and I've just finished Y. I want to get, one DC or Marvel book on the roster. What do you think is the best one out there? And he was, you have to read what Brubaker's doing on Captain America. It's like 24 in the Marvel universe, which I thought was I know that's a description that came from Brubaker himself, but he was dead right. The minute I started picking that up, it was like, holy fuck, this is Captain America. This is the way I want to read it.
He killed Jack Monroe, Nomad, and I wasn't mad. That's how good it is.
Yeah.
He brought Bucky back to life, the biggest taboo ever, and I loved it.
Yeah.
That Brubaker run is probably the last time I really enjoyed Cap. I hung on, I think Nick Spencer finally broke me with the whole Hydra thing. I was like,
we're on the same page, mate. That's a book that should just never have happened. It was totally pointless.
I get it was part of a bigger arc, and there was going to be a resolution, but Cap should never be a Nazi. Never.
Because even if it's an overarching narrative, you don't want those books out there to be taken by that lunatic fringe, and because those panels exist and can be used shorn of context to further that narrative. I think that's the problem with doing that. And that's why I think it was a very reckless thing to do, particularly when it's fucking Captain America, who, it created by two of the most famous Jewish comic creators of all time. To fight Nazis? Why the fuck would you do that?
Was there an editor involved? I mean, I don't understand. And we've seen Cap break this programming before. We saw it in Tales of Suspense when the Red Skull tried to hypnotize him to shoot a Nazi or to shoot an American general. We saw it with the Grand Director, that storyline. It doesn't work on Steve Rogers. Sorry, don't do this. And I haven't looked back. I know Tanishi supposedly had a really great run. I have them. I can't bring myself to go back. I'm so old, Andrew. I'm such a funny guy. I open up these books and I'm like, X-Men have an island of their own and it's Krakatoa. I can't do it. I mean, I yearn for the old days.
Yeah, it's so true though. I mean, what I yearn for is, and this is why I tend not to read the adventures of the big heroes from the big two companies, as much as I love them. I'm a huge Batman fan, as much as I'm a huge Captain America fan, huge Spider-Man fan. But I like reading definable runs of things with a beginning, a middle, and an end without too much universe bleed as well. That's the other thing. When I was a kid, I used to love the fact that Spider-Man's having a fight on a rooftop in Manhattan and Thor's flying past. I used to love that. But in the world in which we live now, the main reason I don't read X-Men comics anymore is that overarching, massively soap opera narrative that they have. It's just too much for me. And crossovers kill my enjoyment,
You can't jump in anywhere. It's so unfriendly. And another thing that just tells you how far off these iconic characters have strayed from their original paths. There is a really popular YouTube comic book person who I won't name, who had a video this week where he's talking about, there's a classic Spider-Man story. This one where he's got the symbiote costume on. He goes to Reed Richards, finds out it's alive, right? So they get it off of him. And, he's in his underwear, so they give him a Fantastic Four outfit and a paper bag over his head. And this YouTuber is commenting on it like, this is the most out-of-character Spider-Man story ever. It makes him look stupid. But no, this is Peter Parker. This is exactly who he is. Yeah. Just for you.
Oh, and also it's kind of like half of that is kind of a meta Forbish Man reference anyway. Yeah. It's like, come on, it's ticking the boxes. That's exactly what Peter Parker
Peter's the lovable loser.
It's exactly the kind of stuff that happens to him.
And it's supposed to be funny. Spider-Man, I don't know if you guys are younger audience don't know this. Spider-Man's supposed to be a humorous book.
Yeah,
it's not supposed to be deadly serious. He used to wisecrack when he was fighting Doc Ock. He was not married to his supermodel. It's so sad to see how far off the track we are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we've arced nicely into what I'd like to round out on, John, which is in addition to your incredibly successful record label career, you're actually very active within the YouTube broadcasting and podcasting space, like I myself am. Could you just talk us through the different podcasts and YouTube shows that you have?
Sure. Music-wise, I produce with Rich Mahan the Rhino podcast every other Wednesday, and interviews with different artists. It just runs the gamut. One week we'll have Graham Nash. The next week we'll have Debbie Gibson. So it's something for everyone on the Rhino podcast. I also co-host Totally 80s with Lindsay Parker from Yahoo Entertainment. Totally 80s, just what it says on the tin. We talk 80s. We go deep. We just did a 2-parter on Prince Proteges, where I defended the Apollonia 6 album as being actually better than the Vanity 6 album. Yeah. So if that floats your boat, that's a podcast. And then I have Bronze and Modern Gods, which is the comic book podcast I co-host with Richard, my best friend from 30 years. And we rant about comic books just like you and I just did for the last 30 minutes. Yeah. And that's every Monday and Friday.
Fantastic. And all of those shows, if you haven't found them already, you can find links to them in the show notes for this episode. And that feels to me, John, like it's a good point for us to close out this particular conversation. Thanks so much for talking me through your extremely interesting career at Rhino and on the music side. And also, thanks for indulging me in talking about Captain America for half an hour, which I could do for 3 hours. And I could see that was the case. Mine too, mate. But I was very interested. Some of the stories about your music career I hadn't heard before. And I was fascinated how you transitioned from a broadcaster for the Army into doing what you do now, which is such an interesting journey, mate.
Yeah, I pretty much a unicorn, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And on that note, you take care of yourself, John Hughes. It's great to see you. Take care, and thanks for coming on the show. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Hard Agree. This episode was edited by John Horsley and Kenrick Regan, and our theme music, Golden, was written and performed for this show by Liverpool's finest band, DENIO. Hard Agree is a production of the Spoilerverse and myself, Andrew Sumner.